water. If you have beverages, water is allowed. If you have anything else, just please be careful not to spill. So right now, at this time, it is my pleasure to introduce our motivational speaker, Jane Barrash. Jane has worked in this area for 40 years with internationally known physicists, physicians, brain scientists, biochemists, psychologists, mathematicians, space scientists, and cultural leaders to design a program for maximizing human capacities and leadership development. Teaching populations ranging from Fortune 100 executives and medical professionals to the most seriously mentally and emotionally disordered public school students, and as well as maximum security inmates. So with that, I would like to invite Jane to this podium.
Thank you. So you can hear. I'm Jane Barrash, and I've been with the Continuum Center since 1984. And our mission is to explore the nature of consciousness, human capacity, and the continuity and interconnectedness of life. Michael mentioned one of our programs and activities. Part of our work is bringing in internationally known speakers, touring exhibits on consciousness. Recently going to the University of Chicago, and St. Kate's was on its way to Morehouse when COVID hit. We actually started with an exhibit that came from the Museum of Science and Industry in LA in 1978, where it was first on display. And it was so popular, its stay was extended twice, and over 2 million visits, which is record-breaking. And that exhibit was interdisciplinary and multicultural, exploring consciousness and the interconnectedness of life, with a particular focus on exploring what happens to consciousness after death of the physical body and presenting evidence that consciousness can exist independent of the physical body and survive death of the physical body. The United Nations wanted that exhibit, the Smithsonian wanted that exhibit, but a philanthropist from Minnesota saw it, was so impressed, bought rights to it, built a $250,000 version in 1979 and brought it up to the Twin Cities, where it was at the top of the IDS, Landmark Center, Pillsbury Center. It toured a lot of high-profile locations, and I saw it in 1981, and it was all the things that I'd been interested in and never had seen it all gathered in one place, and I ended up getting involved, and that was many, many, many years ago. So we have continued to bring in speakers and design training programs and other kinds of events. So pulling from all of that experience, I'm speaking today on radical kindness, and I would say that what we think of today as radical kindness, I would say, is truly an innate directive or an innate intelligence that unfortunately we've kind of derailed. It's been conditioned out of us various forms, but primarily I hold our education system responsible. Kindness flows from a deep sense of interconnectedness and also from our animal emotional brain. That brain, unless disturbed by neglect or abuse or threats to safety or survival, is wired for bonding and a desire to care and share with others, which equals kindness. Quantum physics has confirmed the fundamental interconnectedness that our modern science, and I question how modern it is when it was developed over 500 years ago, called Newtonian, Cartesian, mechanistic, and materialist. Rene Descartes came up with the scientific method that said only what's physical, measurable, and publicly observable is real. If you can't publicly see something, if you can't physically measure it, don't waste your time with it. It can't tell you anything about the real nature of the world. What's interesting is, and I've said this before in presentations, he got his idea for the scientific method from 3 dreams, and then turns around and says, dreams can't possibly tell you anything important about life because you can't measure a dream or publicly observe one. So that kind of shows the, in a sense, ridiculousness of the modern paradigm called Newtonian, Cartesian, mechanistic, and materialist. Materialist because it believes that everything can be reduced to physical, measurable matter. I think that's caused a lot of problems in the world, including materialism, including divisiveness, because it's all about separate parts and pieces. Einstein said the illusion of separation is the greatest tragedy of humanity. And when you are conditioned into believing that reality is what your five senses tell you, because modern science is empirical based on what you know through your five senses, your five senses are very limited in terms of what they can report about the actual nature of reality. So our eyes see a little bit of the light spectrum and we call that reality. There's a lot more, but we have chosen or been conditioned again to ignore those other levels. So, you know, just a couple quotes from our recent exhibit on consciousness. Here is one by Ralph Waldo Emerson. There is one mind common to all individual men. Every, you know, back then, men, you know, sorry, they are not quite honoring of women. We live in, every man is an inlet to the same and to all of the same. We live in succession, in division, in parts and particles. In the meantime, within man is the soul of the whole, the wise silence, the universal beauty to which every part and particle is equally related, the eternal one, the act of seeing and the thing seen, the seer and the spectacle, the subject and object are one. This kind of sentiment, now that's you know, Ralph Waldo Emerson was a writer, but there are many, 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 many physicists who are talking about the same thing. And quantum physics really did birth this awareness, except again, it's been marginalized and ignored, not integrated into our modern world of science, this idea of fundamental interconnectedness. So education and science. So science is not monolithic. People say, oh, I believe science. Well, it's like there's good science and bad science. There's updated science and there's old science. Science has gone through many iterations and we're kind of stuck in a model that has fed a lot of, I think, the most base instincts of humanity. So Roger Sperry, a Nobel neuroscientist, said that societal values depend on our understanding of what consciousness is. Is it separate or is it universal? Is it temporal or is it timeless? And if you buy into the model of the materialist version of society and the illusion of separation, it feeds an us against them. It feeds a fear because you're not part of something whole, you're suddenly separate, and that sense of separation can create a lot of fear. So we encourage that, unfortunately, in our systems, and it's led to where we are today. So a failing of education is that it's based in this mechanistic, materialist, Newtonian, Cartesian view of the world, and education focuses on developing just limited aspects of our brain. So what we do in our training, in our program, is we kind of want to expand on an understanding of the brain. And this is not anatomically correct, but our one brain has, we break it out into three main sections. Again, this isn't anatomically correct, and there's more to it, but basically, we have the earliest brain that we share with reptiles. It's the nervous system. Millions of years later, the animal, mammalian, limbic system, midbrain evolved, and we share that with animals, and that is the brain of emotions. Then, millions of years later, the neocortex with left and right hemisphere in the frontal lobe. I'm not going to go into great detail, but the point is education basically, with all of these elements and others that I'm not listing, focuses just on the left hemisphere. Math, science, verbal skills, logical analysis, the focus on separate parts and pieces, again, breaking them down. That's what we're learning. The right hemisphere is the complement. We ignore it. It sees the whole. It's nonverbal. It's imagistic. The right hemisphere has more connections to the emotional brain and developed before the left hemisphere. There's asymmetry for a reason. They're not the same, and it's a lot of real estate to waste if you're going to think a whole half of the brain has no purpose in human development. But that's kind of what we've been fed. So the left is about STEM. Now, STEM is basically artificial intelligence. STEM is the cold calculating part of our brain, and it's useful, but it sure isn't the whole of the brain, and it's not the more human aspect of the brain. So just as a little kind of framework for why I think we're where we're at and what needs to change. So we have the platform in a sense of interconnectedness, and we have the brain structures to support interconnectedness and caring. But we don't develop those, and in fact we marginalize them. So the left is logical and analysis, the right is intuition. We used to call it women's intuition. What a great way to kind of marginalize something. And emotion, you're so emotional, it's like it's a woman thing. It's like you got to be more like a man and really run things the right way. Yeah, into the ground, over the cliff, you know, into a brick wall. Anyway, so we have the platform and the innate brain structures to radiate kindness, but we have been now conditioned that kindness has been radicalized, and we're kind of more conditioned to, again, this separation, so it's me against you, look out for number one. You know, Einstein was asked, what's the most important question? And he said, the most important question is the universe friendly? Most people would say, oh my God, no, it's a terrible place, it's dangerous. And the astrophysicists will say it's a vast, cold, inhospitable universe. You'd freeze in a second. So everything is telling us to be afraid. Einstein was trying to point out, again with his claim that the greatest tragedy is the illusion of separation, that really it is a much more magical universe. And that's part of what our program teaches, which goes into schools and into prisons and into corporations. I've worked with the bottom 3% of the bottom 3% of emotionally and behaviorally disordered kids, and I'll tell you what, they're brilliant, but not in that left brain box. And no kid wants to be told they're dumb just because they're not into math and science. So they act out. And maybe they have emotional issues because of what's going on at home. We don't deal with emotions. And in the materialist model of science, since the belief is only physical measurable things are real, we take something like emotion and we reduce it to chemicals and to neurons. So guess what? You got a problem with your emotions? We got some good chemicals for you. It's a really wrong-minded model. And I found in teaching this program for over 30-some years that when there is effective information and tools given, kids can change like that. I was actually, and if you're feeling alienated, if you're feeling like you're not seen or understood, you're not going to necessarily feel like you're in the place of wanting to be kind to others. You're just busy trying to kind of protect yourself and stand up for yourself, and retaliate is the normal thing when you, or withdraw. So here's a recent example, and I have many over the years, but an 8-year-old boy, since he was 4, was labeled and medicated for ADD, ADHD, autism, emotional behavioral disorders, with suicidal ideation. Since he was 4. So now he's 8. So he's had 4 years of conventional psychologists, psychiatrists, mental health workers, social workers, and school counselors, and he was worse. In trouble in school all the time. They actually added a new label. Go science, intermittent explosive disorder. When I heard that, I thought, oh, you're kidding, that's a Saturday Night Live skit, right? No. They just keep coming up with labels, and people are like, okay, you got a new medication for that? So I told the parents, I said, give me 10 hours. They've had 4 years. Give me 10 hours with the program I have. And guess what? 2 hours a week for 5 weeks, a changed kid, happy, not getting into fights. He actually turned around a bullying situation. No medications, but just good information and tools to develop parts of his brain and parts of his personality that had been ignored. So, you know, there's a lot at stake in this. Kindness is a wonderful concept, and we need to do a little more work to create the structures and the format and the framework that actually supports kindness. So the right hemisphere that's been ignored has more ties to the emotional animal brain. And if we then develop the right hemisphere in the emotional animal brain, it would make a huge difference. Part of the right hemisphere, again, left is logic, analysis, verbal. And by the way, verbal, once you name something, it's this, not that. So it already is into the separation model. And then we have Sesame Street. One of these things is not like the others. Isn't that a good message? Let's be trained to see what's different. What makes somebody stand away? How do we separate out? I think they need a new song about, hey, we're all connected. Let's see the connections, and actually part of our program with youth is the connections game to get that right hemisphere going. Let's start seeing connections. When you start seeing connections, you start feeling connections. When you learn about quantum physics and these other teachings, and you understand, wow, we are all interconnected, it makes you think twice about your behaviors towards other people. But right now, the conditioning is, I got to get the material things, because that's what we value in society, and I'll do what I need to do to climb that ladder. Actually, I don't know how many of you would have heard of Jill Bolt Taylor, who wrote a book, Stroke of Insight. She was a Harvard neuroanatomist, so focusing on the brain, and she had a stroke that shut down her left hemisphere. All she could do was relate to life through her right hemisphere. I'm going to read what she had to say. I think I'll read it. It's a little small. Okay, for 8 years, I did not exist as a solid. I existed as a fluid entity in a fluid environment. When I lost that perception of quote-unquote solid and that defined boundary of my body, I became at one with all that is. This was a marvelous experience. To be that enormous in the absence of the distinctions of language that has to label everything in my world. I mean, she talks about when you shut down that left hemisphere, you actually are experiencing and perceiving that unity. And I will tell you, that's why psychedelics work. They shut down the left hemisphere, and it's not a hallucination. It's an experience of reality that our left brain clamps down on and suppresses. And that's why a lot of these psychedelics that were called evil and criminal, because they threaten the power of those wanting to institute left brain education and order. It helps, it's very therapeutic. People have a very different sense of themselves, and again, that right hemisphere is connected to more to the emotional brain, so a lot of people who have trouble accessing emotions could suddenly access them. So there are a lot of implications to this shift that needs to happen, and to get past that illusion of separation. Part of the program that I teach called Discovery of Self, the kids learn it. We have a documentary. I have two. I've been doing this work for a long time and taking it into neighborhoods like North Minneapolis. And again, into prisons and homeless shelters, whatever. But, you know, we are so sure that everything we see and hear is real. Marvin Gaye had that great song, believe half of what you see and none of what you hear. And we believe everything we see and hear. But it's like, you know, if I said, tell me about this right here, you'd say, well, it's solid. Looks solid, sounds solid, feels solid, but it's made of atoms, and atoms are 99.9% space. It is an illusion that this is solid. But atoms spin so fast, they have the appearance of being solid. Like if there were a fan here, when the fan's shut off, you can see a lot of space, but when it's spinning, it seems solid, and for all practical purposes, it is, because you couldn't get your hand through. Hopefully, you wouldn't even try. Anyway, our emotional animal brain is very powerful, and we can learn a lot from animals. And hopefully, we'll be seeing some YouTubes. I think if kids started off a school day every day with 3-4 minutes of these YouTubes where animals, what we do is focus on love, compassion, gratitude, and the desire to protect others. Animals live that. That's what that brain's about that we have. But like I keep saying, it's been shut down. And there are many stories. By the way, Peggy Mason from the University of Chicago did research with rats, where she had a free-range rat in an area and then put in a canister, a clear canister, with a trapped rat in there, and dropped that into the area where the free-range, free-roaming rat was. And that free-roaming rat was so upset that other rat was trapped that it worked, had no training, but worked to figure out how to let it out. And it wasn't an easy trap door to open. But that rat figured it out. Then they upped the ante. The free-roaming rat, a canister of chocolate. Oh, that rat loves chocolate. And then another with the trapped rat again. The free-range rat, and they ran this a few times. If it didn't first let out the trapped rat before opening the canister with the chocolate, it still didn't eat the chocolate till it shared with the other rat. So Peggy Mason's like, I'm honored to have a rat brain. Rats, birds, fish, mammals, animals, you know, the whole bit. We share that brain, and again, we can learn a lot from them. Animals will gladly give their life to save someone else. So we'll see what these YouTubes show later, but my point is we've got a lot to learn. And let me see here. So part of what we need to do, and part of my work, is systems change. I think our healthcare system and our education system is based on this wrong model of science. And so how could it be different if we really integrated? Last year was the year of the quantum. And everyone thinks that quantum physics only has application to science and technology, but actually very much to human capacity and human development. And so trying to introduce the implications, the findings and implications of quantum physics is significant and would make a huge difference. So kindness will flow when we get better information, and it won't be so radical. Again, it's in us. So I don't know what may show, but there are a few. There's one, for instance, and young children. They've done research that young children are more inclined to share. There's a very cute one of maybe 2 and 1.5-year-old kids. They're black children, and I don't know from this country or another country, but they clearly don't have a lot. They're dressed in clothes that are a bit shabby. And someone comes over and gives the little boy, you know, a piece of, you know, food, bread. And he starts to take a bite, and then he hands it over to the girl to take a bite. She takes a bite, hands it back. He takes a bite, hands it back, and it's all about the sharing. You know, there's another one about a dog that's being filmed, and this dog runs to an open market and steals something. You follow the dog, and it's taking it over to these puppies that are hungry. Another one, a guy feeds a deer. Sure enough, coming back, the next day, there are like 15 deer there. It just shows how kindness exponentially can grow. There are all kinds of stories from animals, and again, if a school day started showing some of these, I think kids would have a whole different kind of messaging about who they are if it's explained to them that that's in your brain too. My work is about helping people access the proverbial other 90% of brain-mind capacity for whatever it is you want to do. And if you don't develop some of these essential aspects of humanity and of yourself, you're going to be kind of groveling more at the bottom, or struggling to make it, and not even aware of challenges you're creating. So the quantum model, by the way, the founder, Max Planck, concluded So the founder of quantum physics concluded that mind is the matrix of matter. The source, your mind, your internal environment, is the beginning of everything. And we need to realize that what we're creating out there is coming from something in here. And if it's not about kindness, what are you creating? Now, I saw a documentary on the Dalai Lama called The Wisdom of Happiness. And he is speaking, but they have him voice over a lot of footage and a lot of photographs, and it gets into his history. He was run out of Tibet, him and the Chinese. Chiang Kai-shek, it turns out, was like a father figure to him. They were super close. Yet Chiang Kai-shek started a murderous campaign to get rid of all the Tibetans. Now here, so compassion is a great concept. It's even more profound when somebody really has to overcome a lot of reasons that might want them to be filled with hate and revenge. But here he is talking about really trying to find that place, create that space internally of compassion and silence and forgiveness and kindness and all of those things. Now, I think also there is the issue of how do you balance kindness and accountability? If you're too kind all the time, doesn't that become enabling? Isn't that codependency? I've worked a lot with Native Americans, and I learned a lot from Native Americans. There's something called the Sundance ceremony, where you pierce. And they go through that not because they're barbaric or macho, want to show how they can handle pain, but they live in that model traditionally of interconnectedness. So the strong ones endure the pain to lift the pain of the others. That's not an uncommon theme in religions. And leading up to the Sundance piercing, there's 4 days and 4 nights of dancing where supporters will do the dancing. And you know what? If somebody falls, it might be the white way. Oh my, let me pick them up. Let me help this person. And they're like, no, no, no. If they fall, they needed to fall. And if they're going to get up, they will get up. You cripple people if you do too much for them. So understanding that, there are limits to compassion. What about accountability? I don't think we have enough discussion about accountability. I don't think we have enough discussion about boundaries. And there's no formula, there's no 911 to call, hey, what do I do in this situation? Which is why we need to develop intuition, which is the right hemisphere. Because you got to figure out, you got to get an answer, you got to be open to information that isn't going to be found in a book or in an expert out there. But we really have become so dependent on having other people fill us with information rather than understanding our own intelligence and our own humanity. So now, do we have anything? Okay.
Even in a moving world, it may not be real, but the feeling is. And sometimes that's enough. Trust isn't about being the same. It's about feeling safe, even with someone different. And sometimes, trust becomes peace, where you can finally rest. Love doesn't need words. It just finds a way. Some don't just notice. They give, even when it's all they have. No words, just staying close, like that's all that matters. Some don't just give, they stay and choose you too. Sometimes we try and still fall, and someone lifts us anyway. And sometimes love looks like this. Simple moments we don't want to end. And sometimes love means letting go, even when you don't want to.
Oh my God. Let's go.
Maybe they
Okay, so
understand more than we do.
we got this one. Thank you. So I just want to say, you know, kindness comes from a sense of love and a sense of connection. And animals really are an amazing expression of that. This next one, Keanu Reeves, who was in The Matrix, and I think that had an effect on him. If you haven't seen The Matrix, it's very powerful. And I didn't know this, but he had a child with his girlfriend, but the child was stillborn. And then his girlfriend died. I do think that we can learn to turn our pain into compassion. But oftentimes we turn our pain into anger that shuts us down. And again, we need help navigating this. So we'll watch this for a bit now.
In the facility had just gone completely silent for the first time in 2 years. Nobody could explain it. Nobody except maybe the man standing in front of that cage. The motorcycle pulled into the parking lot just after 2 in the afternoon. No security, no assistant, no one checking the perimeter or holding a clipboard. Just Keanu Reeves, a worn leather jacket, and a helmet he set quietly on the seat before standing there for a moment, looking up at the building like he was deciding something he'd already decided a dozen times and kept walking away from. The sign above the entrance read, Pacific Shore K, 9 Rescue, San Diego, California. He had been here before in his mind, talked himself into it, talked himself back out. For months, his house in the hills felt wrong in a way he couldn't name. Too quiet, too still. Duke had been gone almost a year, and the absence of that dog. The sound of him, the weight of him sleeping at the foot of the bed, the way he'd press against Keanu's leg during the hard nights, had become its own kind of noise. So he was here. Finally, he walked inside. The woman at the front desk looked up and did a small double take she quickly tried to hide. Her name tag read Sam Porter. Short dark hair. The slightly exhausted look of someone who genuinely cared about this job and was therefore always tired. Mr. Reeves, she said, extending a hand. Sam. We spoke on the phone. Just Keanu, he said. She gave a small nod, okay, sure, and led him down the main corridor. The smell hit first. Disinfectant. Wet fur. Something warm underneath it all that was harder to name. Dogs pressed against kennel doors as they passed. Tails going. Some barked. Some just watched with those enormous, hopeful eyes that dogs somehow manage to maintain even after everything. Sam talked as they walked. This one's 2 years old, great with kids. This one's a little shy at first but comes around fast. This one was found abandoned at a rest stop outside Bakersfield and took 3 weeks to stop flinching at sudden movement. Keanu listened. He stopped at a few of the kennels, let the dogs smell his hand. They were good dogs, every one of them, but something kept pulling him forward. They reached a heavy steel door at the end of the hallway. A sign on it read, Restricted Area, Staff Only. Sam's pace quickened slightly, just a fraction. Keanu noticed. Then the sound came. It didn't sound like barking. Not exactly. It was deeper than that, more ragged, like something tearing itself apart from the inside. The steel door shook with it. The sound bounced off the concrete walls and hung in the air long after it had ended, leaving a kind of ringing. Keanu stopped walking. What's back there?
Sam hesitated.
A beat too long. Isolation ward. Dogs that aren't available for adoption. Why not? Behavioral cases. Some of them are too dangerous to rehome safely. 2 staff members came out of a side room just behind them, mid-conversation, not noticing Keanu until it was too late. Nearly bent the bars again this morning. 5 more days. The paperwork's already signed. Should have been done a long time ago, honestly. They saw him. Stopped. One of them went visibly red. They muttered something and moved quickly down the hall. Keanu turned back to Sam. 5 days, he said. Sam let out a slow breath. Shadow is scheduled to be euthanized at the end of the week. Director Holloway made the call. He's been here almost 2 years. He's attacked 3 of our staff. One of them needed reconstructive surgery on his forearm. Nobody can get near him without. Another bark exploded from behind the door. Not the sound of an animal that wanted attention. The sound of an animal that had been alone for so long it had forgotten there was anything else. "Tell me about him," Keanu said. Sam told him in the hallway, standing in the flickering fluorescent light while the everyday sounds of the facility drifted around them. Shadow was a German Shepherd, 7 years old. Retired police K9, formerly with the Portland PD, one of their best by all accounts. Explosive detection, tracking, suspect apprehension. Decorated twice in 5 years of service. His handler's name was Officer Daniel Reyes. 5 years they worked together. Sam said the word together the way people say it when they mean something more than professional. Partners in the real sense. Daniel would bring Shadow to family cookouts, would run him on the beach at sunrise before a shift. On long assignments away from home, it was the dog he called his wife to ask about first. Then, about 2.5 years ago, they were sent to a warehouse on the east side of Portland. A drug operation. Intelligence called it routine. It wasn't. They walked into an ambush. In the chaos, one of the gunmen took aim at Shadow. Daniel Reyes saw it. He didn't think about it. He stepped in front of his dog. The bullet went through his chest. He died on that warehouse floor, Shadow beside him, before help arrived. According to the report, Shadow refused to leave the body for 4 hours. He howled until his voice was gone. When officers finally managed to pull him away, something had cracked open inside that dog that never healed back right. Sam stopped talking for a second. Somewhere in the building, a phone rang and went unanswered. "He's been here since the department transferred him," she said finally. 3 staff hospitalizations. Nobody gets within arm's reach. Holloway's been trying to find an alternative for over a year, but she shook her head slowly. There isn't one. Not anymore. Keanu was quiet for a moment. Outside the steel door, Shadow had gone silent again. "I want to see him," Keanu said. "Keanu." "I know," he said. "I still want to see him." There was nothing to argue against. No aggression, no demand, just a quiet statement from a man who had already made up his mind. Sam studied his face for a moment, searching for recklessness. She didn't find it. She pulled out her keycard. The isolation ward was colder, dimmer. The noise of the main facility faded behind the steel door as they walked down the corridor, past empty kennels, toward the one at the far end with extra reinforcing bars and 3 warning signs plastered on the wall beside it. Shadow stood at the back of his kennel. He was large, powerfully built, with the kind of presence that fills a space. Black and tan coat gone a little dull from years without proper sunlight. Ears pinned flat against his skull. Every muscle in his body coiled and ready. He saw them. He moved. The lunge was terrifying in the way that fast, large things are terrifying. The speed of it didn't register until it had already happened. His body hit the reinforced bars with a sound like a car door slamming full force. The kennel shook. Staff members at the far end of the corridor grabbed tranquilizer poles. Someone shouted for Keanu to step back. Keanu didn't step back. He stood there, hands loose at his sides, and watched Shadow throw himself against those bars again and again. Snarling, teeth fully bared, eyes blown wide and wild. The sound was enormous in that small space. Then Shadow stopped. Just stopped. Mid-snarl, mid-motion. His chest heaved. His breath came in ragged pulls. His nostrils worked rapidly, pulling in something that had reached him through the fury, something that confused him. He tilted his head the smallest degree and looked at Keanu. Not at the group. At Keanu specifically. The silence stretched out. 10 seconds. 15. Staff members exchanged glances. This wasn't how it went with Shadow. By now, he should have been in a full frenzy, unreachable, exhausting himself against the bars. Instead, he was just standing there, watching, waiting. Then Shadow made a sound that Sam later said she hadn't heard from him once in 2 years. Not a growl, not a bark, a low, trembling whine, the kind that comes from somewhere behind the ribs. The sound of something that has been braced against pain for so long that it no longer remembers what it felt like before. Keanu's jaw tightened. His hand moved slowly to the pocket of his jacket. Sam whispered, "I've never seen him do that." Shadow's tail moved. Once, the smallest possible motion, barely there, barely more than a question. Keanu reached into his pocket and held out what was inside. A leather dog collar. Old, soft with years of use, the metal tag worn down but still catching the dim light. Duke's collar. He'd carried it every day since the morning he'd held that dog and felt him go still in his arms. Shadow's nostrils flared. He took one step forward, then another, slow and careful, entirely unlike the animal that had just been throwing himself at the bars. He pressed his nose through the space between the metal and into Keanu's open palm, and breathed in long and deep, and stayed there. Sam's hand went over her mouth. The most dangerous dog in the facility stood with his muzzle resting in a stranger's hand like a dog half his age falling asleep in the sun. "I want to go inside." Keanu said it quietly when director Frank Holloway arrived. Holloway was tall, gray-suited, with the manner of a man who had seen too many good intentions turn into liability claims and emergency room visits. He'd recognized Keanu immediately, and it hadn't softened him any. "No," he said flatly. "I understand your concern,"
We don't need to watch the whole
Keanu
thing.
said. "Then you
Oh, can you
understand
stop it?
this conversation is finished."
Okay, we don't need to watch more. I just wanted to kind of show that much, again, to make the point. I mean, did you find that moving? To me, it shouldn't be radical. That's kind of how we're wired. And when people act out, and I've seen this a lot with working in prisons and these schools, that if someone's neglected or abused, they're going to act out. Everyone wants love. Everyone wants to be acknowledged. Everybody wants to be treated with care. And if they're not, all kinds of things go off the rails. And this is a very profound example of a heart that felt the connection, that wanted to reach out and share love. That's what kindness is. And unfortunately, things like love have become radical. We do the kind of love of things that we like and people who are good to us. But when you can really kind of stretch and understand that we're all connected and healing will happen, growth will happen, miracles will happen, when you really extend yourself in new ways to people from that deep sense of interconnectedness and from that part of your brain that pulls you towards that kind of connection and caring. Any questions? Yeah?
Hello, everybody. Thank you. Unless somebody wanted to talk first, I hate it. I don't like to jump on the mic like that so quick. But here I am. Thank you so much for coming and sharing with us what you are sharing. And I just wanted to let everybody know that there are 574 federally recognized tribes on Turtle Island in the United States, and not all of them do the Sundance ceremony. So I think it's my obligation just to educate you, and anybody could just look that up.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
absolutely.
And so that goes along with the thing. There's a book called, and a conference coming up called Belonging Without Othering. Belonging Without Othering. And so I think with the conclusion that I have come with after finding out about what lateral violence is, it's the flip side of lateral kindness. And so if you want to look at lateral kindness, that's a beautiful thing. But that yin and that yang, we have to look at the other one to find out how that people became so dismissed from their left brain. You know, how did it come about? And so I just wanted to say that about the tribes and the Sundance and the lateral violence portion, because the last time that I was here, I believe I spoke to your friend there about these things, about lateral violence and how we can flip it around to lateral kindness and bring that energy in, and hopefully that also that we include spirituality. We cannot forget that. So how does quantum physics and everything that you're talking about, this will be my question, how does that connect with spirituality and maybe how people may have been disconnected from their own tribes? Because even if you're a Euro-American, not white, maybe if you're a Euro-American, maybe from France or, wherever, maybe they would like to find out where their roots are. So my question is whatever it is, whatever you take from that. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so, and thank you for that clarification, and I should have been more careful. I did not want to suggest that every tribe has the same customs, the same traditions, the same ceremonies, not by any means. So thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for that. And quantum physics is about honoring non-material reality. We are in a box of thinking materiality is the extent of everything. So to me, when you get into the mindset and conceptualization that there's more to life than meets the eye, to me that's what spirituality is. It's going beyond the physical. I'm into metaphysics. Meta means beyond. You go beyond the physical where there is interconnectedness as opposed to the illusion of separation. So to me, those are all very spiritual values. I think for myself, speaking in terms of science, more people are comfortable. I could say, it's science and spirituality. I think quantum physics ends up being a bridge for that. So I don't know if that's answering. But see, one to me is not one separate. One is one. So when people say God is one, it's like God is not one over there. I speak in terms of the universe, that we are all interconnected that way. So for me, the source is us in that bigger framework. So one is oneness. It's not one source that's separate. So. Right, and that's what I'm saying. I think they are, overlapping for sure, or different ways to say the same thing.
Well, thank you for all that you're doing, and I'm still thinking about that movement that we're going to make with the inclusion for everybody, that when we learn these things about being kind to ourselves, to learn that self-love, that's where it comes from. Learn how to love yourselves so that we can love others.
And that is important as well. Thank you. Can we have one more question?
Okay, it's not a question. I just wanted to add to what you said. I think everything is one. So really, science is not separate from God. God is science. So there is no difference whether it's quantum physics or God, and we're only going to make progress when we realize that there is no difference between science and God. As long as we keep those separate, spirituality is not separate from science. It's all one, because God is in everything. So there is no separation. Everything is one. There is no science here, spirituality there. No, it's all the same. Until we get that, we're going to be primitive, like we are now.
Well, I would like to say that there are things that happen on different levels, and I think on one level there are distinctions that are important. If you want to take pride, I'm Jewish. I want to take pride in that, but that doesn't mean I am also not part of everything. So I think to understand that there are distinctions, science is certain expression, other things are a certain expression, but they are all under that larger umbrella. So I think to honor individuality in the context of interconnectedness, I think you serve both. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh. Oh, it opened, right? With them hanging from the thing? Yeah. Right. Right. And by the way, I have some things in that other room from the Continuum Center. It's the books, should you want to ask questions or look at anything.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
Jane will be available afterwards for more questions. So right now it's time for the offering. LHSC is funded by your donations. In a moment, I will be passing baskets, which will include our Venmo QR if you care to donate via Venmo. Your donations are primary source of income to the center, which allows us to keep the lights on, bring all these amazing speakers to you and experiences. We invite you to partner with us and in supporting the spiritual community.
Why are there so many songs about rainbows? And what's on the other side? Rainbows are visions, but only illusions. And rainbows have nothing to hide. So we've been told, and some choose to believe it. I know they're wrong, wait and see. Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me.